Have you ever felt a heaviness in your home that you couldn't explain, something you couldn't see, yet somehow you could feel? A tension that rises for no reason, a silence that doesn't feel peaceful, or a sudden shift in mood the moment you walk through the door? Most people ignore these moments. They call it stress, or fatigue, or just life. But what if it isn't? What if your home is carrying a weight that didn't come from you, but came from something you allowed inside without realizing it? This is where most spiritual battles begin, not outside, but inside the walls where we sleep, eat, and try to find peace. And here's the truth few are willing to admit. Your environment is shaping you every single day. It's shaping your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, and even the tone of your relationships. A home that feels light strengthens you. A home that feels heavy drains you. And if you don't take control of that atmosphere, something else will. That's why today's message matters, because the biggest danger isn't the attack you see. It's the one you don't. The subtle influence, the quiet distraction, the small doorway that looks innocent yet gives darkness a place to rest. Most people never question the objects sitting on their shelves or hanging on their walls. They never question the meaning behind something they bought because it looked cool or something they accepted as a gift because it was nice. But objects carry energy, they carry history, they carry intention, and some objects carry spiritual weight that can enter your life without your permission. This isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Fear keeps you stuck, but awareness sets you free. And once you see what doesn't belong in your home, you stop fighting battles you were never meant to fight. You reclaim your peace. You reclaim your clarity. You reclaim the authority that was always yours. But before we dive into the objects themselves, you need to understand something deeper, something people often overlook. Darkness never enters your life loudly. It enters quietly, softly, through the simplest things, through the things you don't take seriously, through the things you consider no big deal. And that is exactly why you must learn to recognize what you allow into your home. Because what enters your environment eventually enters your mind, and what enters your mind eventually shapes your life. Think about it this way. Your home is not just a building, it is a reflection of your inner state. The objects around you don't just take up space, they influence it. Every symbol, every image, every item holds a message. Some messages empower you, others weaken you without you noticing. The dangerous ones are never the obvious ones. They're the ones that blend in, the ones you've stopped questioning, the ones you've kept for so long that you no longer see them for what they truly are. So ask yourself, what am I allowing into my home? What am I inviting into my life without even realizing it? What have I accepted that may be silently working against me? Most people never ask these questions, yet they wonder why their motivation disappears, why their spirit feels dull, why their faith feels weak, or why their peace feels interrupted. They keep searching for answers outside when the answer is sitting right in front of them, sometimes on a shelf, sometimes in a drawer, sometimes hanging on a wall, sometimes hidden in a place they don't even look anymore. But here's the good news. The moment you identify what doesn't belong, the moment you remove it, something shifts. You feel lighter, you think clearer, you breathe easier, because when you remove what drains you, you make space for what strengthens you. And that is the true purpose of this message, not to scare you, but to empower you, to help you take back control of your space, your mind, and your spirit. As you listen to the rest of this video, remember this: letting go is not loss. Letting go is protection. Letting go is wisdom. Sometimes your breakthrough doesn't come from what you add to your life, but from what you remove. And if you stay with me until the end of this video, I'm going to share a powerful final insight that will help you protect your home in a way that most people never think about. An insight that could shift the entire atmosphere of your life. But for now, open your heart. Open your mind. Let this message speak to places within you that you've ignored for too long, because awareness is the first step toward freedom. And today you choose freedom. Today you choose clarity. Today you choose to remove everything that was never meant to be part of your life. Now let's begin identifying the objects that carry spiritual weight. Objects many people keep without ever knowing the danger they bring. When you begin noticing the atmosphere around you, something inside you shifts. Suddenly you become aware of details you once ignored. You start to realize that the spiritual weight you feel doesn't come from random moments. It often comes from what you've allowed into your space. And the first category of objects people must confront is the one they overlook the most. Things tied to occult symbols or practices, even when they seem harmless on the surface. These items don't always announce themselves. They don't glow, they don't whisper, and they don't frighten you at first sight. In fact, sometimes they appear beautiful, artistic, or mysterious. Just interesting enough to draw your attention, but subtle enough that you never question their impact. Yet these are the objects that quietly influence the atmosphere of a home, not because of their physical presence, but because of the spiritual doorway they represent. Many homes contain symbols that were never meant to be decorative. They were never meant to be fashionable. They were never meant to be entertainment. They were created with purpose, spiritual purpose, and when you bring them into your home without knowing their origin, you give them access to your peace without realizing it. That access may be small, but even a small doorway can invite in something that slowly changes the environment, and this is where awareness becomes your power. Because once you recognize what you've allowed in, you stop treating your home like a storage room and start treating it like a sanctuary. Think about how easily people collect things today. A necklace bought on vacation because it looked cool. A statue picked up at a market because it felt unique. A symbol printed on clothing, posters, or accessories because the design looked different. People rarely pause to ask, what does this represent? Where does it come from? What intention was behind it? They take the object at face value, but the meaning behind it is what carries weight. Objects connected to occult rituals, dark symbolism, or practices that go against their faith can influence the emotional and spiritual tone of a home in subtle ways. They can create uneasiness, confusion, irritability, and even spiritual dullness, not by dramatic force, but by silent influence. And the most dangerous thing about silent influence is that it goes unnoticed until the damage is already done. But here is where strength rises inside you. You do not have to keep anything that weakens your spirit. You do not have to hold on to anything that disrupts your peace. You do not have to justify keeping something simply because it was expensive, beautiful, or sentimental. Your peace is worth more than decoration. Your clarity is worth more than appearance. Your spiritual protection is worth more than the approval of others. When you decide to let go of an object tied to darkness, you are not being dramatic. You are being wise. You are not acting out of fear. You are acting from clarity. Because anything that invites confusion or spiritual heaviness into your home does not belong with you. Removing it is not a loss. It is an act of strength. It is a declaration that your home will not be a place where darkness gets comfortable, and something powerful happens the moment you pick up that first object and choose to remove it. You feel your authority returning. You feel your spirit strengthening. You feel control shifting back into your hands, because taking action, even in something as simple as removing an object, creates momentum. It signals to your mind and your spirit that you are no longer passive. You are aware, you are awake, and you are in charge. This is where transformation begins, not through big dramatic changes, but through small decisions rooted in awareness. The decision to look at every item in your home with honesty. The decision to keep only what supports your peace. The decision to remove anything that carries the intention or symbolism of darkness, no matter how harmless it may seem. And as you do this, something else happens. You begin to grow. You develop stronger discernment. You start noticing things others overlook. You start feeling shifts in atmosphere that others ignore. You start realizing that every object you keep either adds to your peace or steals from it. And the moment you truly understand that, you stop treating objects as things and start recognizing them as influences. This is why removing these objects matters. Not because the object itself is powerful, but because what it represents carries influence. Influence over mood, influence over energy, influence over thought. And when you clear out what does not align with your purpose, you create space for things that do. You deserve a home where peace is not interrupted. You deserve a space where clarity is not clouded. You deserve an environment that strengthens you instead of weakening you. And that begins with the courage to remove the first object. The one that invites darkness quietly, the one that blends in, the one you never questioned. Once you let go of that, you open the door to a lighter, stronger, clearer home. One that supports your spirit instead of draining it. This is the first step toward taking back your space. And as you continue, you will begin to understand how even the things we entertain can shape the atmosphere of our lives in ways we never realized. Once you begin removing objects that invite darkness without your permission, something powerful happens. You start to see your environment through a sharper lens. You notice how every item, every sound, every image carries influence. And that awareness naturally leads you to examine something even more subtle, something most people never stop to evaluate: the entertainment they allow into their home. Entertainment is one of the easiest gateways for negative influence because it feels harmless. It disguises itself as relaxation, as fun, as escape. But what people forget is that the mind does not turn off just because they are only watching or only listening. The mind absorbs, the mind stores, the mind reflects, and the mind becomes shaped by repeated exposure. And this is where many homes unknowingly open the door to darkness, not through objects, but through the content they consume day after day. Books that glorify dark powers, movies that normalize evil, shows that celebrate fear, music that carries destructive messages, decorations or merchandise tied to dark themes. These things may seem like entertainment, but they influence the spirit far more deeply than most people realize. The danger is not in a single moment. It is in repetition. Because repetition shapes belief. Repetition shapes emotions. Repetition shapes identity. And when content glorifying darkness becomes normal in your home, the atmosphere begins to shift quietly. The threshold of what feels wrong becomes lower. The sense of discernment becomes weaker. And the things that once would have made you uncomfortable start to feel ordinary. This is how entertainment becomes a silent teacher, one that teaches without permission, without questioning, without boundaries. Many people do not recognize this shift until they begin to examine themselves. Why has peace been harder to find? Why does anxiety rise with no explanation? Why does the heart feel heavy even when life seems stable? Why does the home feel tense even when nothing is happening? The answer is often simple. Whatever you allow into your mind eventually spills into your spirit. And whatever you allow into your home shapes the emotional climate you live in. This is not about perfection. And that shift leads you toward another category of objects that often hide in plain sight. Items connected to rituals, fortune-telling, divination, or spiritual practices that do not align with the light you're trying to protect. These items are often kept out of curiosity. Some are collected because they seem artistic or mysterious. Others are purchased during moments of confusion or weakness, times when someone was searching for answers, direction, or comfort. And some are simply trends people follow without understanding the roots behind them. But no matter how they entered the home, their influence remains the same. They pull a person toward dependency on the wrong things. They offer guidance without truth. They offer comfort without clarity. They offer answers that never satisfy because they were never designed to give real direction in the first place. This is the nature of tools tied to fortune-telling and rituals. They promise control, but they create confusion. They promise insight, but they produce anxiety. They promise connection, but they disconnect you from your own inner strength. And the most dangerous part is this: they weaken the very confidence you are trying to build. Many people do not realize that objects like tarot cards, energy pendulums, ritual charms, spiritual amulets, or items designed for summoning or channeling are not just objects, they are invitations. Invitations to seek answers from the wrong source. Invitations to rely on something outside of truth. Invitations to attach your future to tools that cannot give real wisdom. And when you depend on something powerless, you become powerless yourself. This is why so many people feel spiritually drained and emotionally restless after using these tools. They feel emptier than before. They feel more confused. They feel more uncertain. Because these items do not bring clarity, they interrupt it. The truth is simple. Nothing that manipulates the unknown can bring you peace. Nothing that seeks answers through darkness can bring you light. But here is where your strength begins, to rise higher. Because recognizing these objects gives you the power to break their influence completely. You no longer have to carry tools that were built on fear, mystery, or deception. You no longer have to rely on objects that force you to abandon your own inner guidance. You no longer have to invest your faith in anything that takes your peace instead of protecting it. When you decide to remove these items from your home, you are not showing weakness. You are showing wisdom. You are not surrendering control. You are reclaiming it. You are not limiting your options. You are opening the door to clarity you never had before. And the moment you take those objects out of your space, something powerful happens inside you. You stop seeking answers in places that were never meant to guide you. You stop depending on tools that keep you spiritually blind. You stop entertaining influences that cloud your purpose. Instead, you begin trusting the strength within you. You begin trusting your intuition. You begin trusting the clarity that comes from a clear mind and a protected spirit. You rise from dependency to discernment, and discernment allows you to see what others cannot see. It shows you the difference between curiosity and danger, between attraction and distraction, between symbols of hope and symbols of darkness, between what feels harmless and what quietly harms you. Many people hold on to these ritualistic items because they fear letting go. They worry that removing them means losing a source of answers. But what they don't realize is that these tools were the very reason they felt lost in the first place. Confusion cannot guide you, darkness cannot strengthen you, and fear cannot lead you to peace. Letting go is not losing guidance, letting go is finding it. When you remove these things from your home, you begin to breathe again. You begin to sense your atmosphere shift. You begin to feel a stillness you forgot existed, because clarity always returns when confusion leaves, and once your home is free from these objects, your mind becomes free as well. You stop seeking direction from objects and start seeking it from truth. You stop searching for signs that lead nowhere and start building a life that moves forward. You stop relying on rituals, and you are not obligated to keep anything that disturbs your peace, no matter who gave it to you. Letting go of a harmful object does not mean you are rejecting the person who gifted it. You are simply choosing to protect your home. You are choosing your spiritual stability over someone else's expectations. You are choosing peace over politeness, and peace should always win. When you begin examining gifts and souvenirs honestly, you open a door toward emotional maturity. You stop keeping things out of guilt. You stop decorating your home with objects that do not align with your spirit. You stop allowing symbolism you don't believe in to influence the energy around you. You begin to ask new questions. Does this object bring me peace? Do I feel lighter with it or heavier? Does it carry meaning I stand behind? Does its origin feel aligned with who I am becoming? These questions are not dramatic. They are wise because the objects you keep shape the atmosphere you live in, and the atmosphere you live in shapes the person you become. Removing items with dark or unknown spiritual ties is not an act of disrespect. It is an act of self-respect. It shows that you value your peace enough to protect it. It shows that you honor your inner growth. It shows that you refuse to allow your home to become a resting place for energies that were never meant to enter your life. And something remarkable happens once these objects leave your home. You feel space open up, physically, emotionally, spiritually. Your home feels cleaner, lighter, softer. You breathe differently, you think differently, you rest differently, you exist differently, because you finally stop sharing your space with energies that do not belong to your purpose, and this clarity naturally leads you to recognize another category of influence. Objects that don't just sit quietly but speak through the images, words, and messages they display. As you remove gifts and souvenirs with spiritual ties you never agreed to, you begin to feel your home shift. The air feels cleaner. Your spirit feels lighter, and with that new clarity, your eyes naturally open to something even more subtle, objects that communicate without words yet influence you every single day, the images, artwork, and symbols displayed around your home. People underestimate the power of what they look at. They treat images as decoration, as harmless visuals, as part of the background, but images are not passive. They speak. They imprint, they shape mood, energy, and even belief. What you see repeatedly begins to enter your subconscious, and what enters your subconscious begins to guide your emotions, quietly, silently, consistently. This is why images and symbols are powerful in any culture, belief system, or spiritual practice. They carry intention. They carry meaning. They were created with a purpose. Some images uplift, some inspire, some strengthen. But others disturb the atmosphere, even when they appear beautiful or artistic on the surface. Dark artwork often slips into homes because it looks creative, deep, or unique. Masks with intimidating expressions, statues representing spirits or deities you do not follow. Artwork depicting suffering, fear, or violence, symbols tied to darkness or occult practices, posters glorifying chaos or destruction. These things are rarely questioned because people assume decoration is harmless. But decoration is influence. Every time you walk past an image, your mind receives a message. Even if you don't notice it, even if you don't think about it, even if it's no longer new to you, your subconscious still processes it. So if the image carries darkness, the message entering your home carries darkness too, and the atmosphere begins to shift. You may feel restless in certain areas of your home. You may notice thoughts becoming heavier without reason. You may feel spiritually numb around certain objects. You may sense discomfort you cannot explain. You may lose energy in rooms where these images hang. This is because your environment speaks to your spirit, and your spirit reacts to what surrounds it. Images and symbols are powerful because they bypass logic, they bypass explanation. They speak directly to emotion, and emotion is the gateway to your inner world. This is why it is essential to examine the artwork in your home with honesty. Ask yourself, what am I allowing myself to look at every day? What message is this object sending into my environment? Does this symbol align with my purpose or confuse it? Does this image lift me or drain me? Does it represent light or disguise darkness behind beauty? These questions help you see what you once ignored. They reveal how much influence artwork has, even when silent. They allow you to recognize that your home is not a museum, it is a sanctuary. And a sanctuary requires intentional protection. Many people hesitate to remove artwork because it feels unnecessary or dramatic, but removing it is not about drama, it is about alignment. You are aligning your environment with your identity. You are choosing to surround yourself with visuals that strengthen your spirit instead of weakening it. Your home is the place where your mind rests. Your home is the place where your emotions reset. Your home is the place where your soul prepares for the world outside. If the images in your home do not support that purpose, then they do not belong there. When you remove artwork that carries dark messaging, whether through symbols, expressions, or themes, you immediately feel a difference. The energy of the room shifts, the walls feel calmer, the atmosphere becomes softer, you begin to breathe deeper, your mind feels clearer, even visitors may feel the change without knowing why. This is because the absence of darkness creates space for peace. Peace is not just the absence of noise, it is the absence of spiritual interference. When you take down images that carry confusion, heaviness, or hidden symbolism, you are clearing space for peace to become the dominant presence in your home. And here is something extraordinary. Once you remove these images, your spirit becomes more sensitive. You begin to notice subtle tension you once ignored. You begin to feel the difference between what aligns with you and what opposes you. You develop a deeper awareness of what belongs in your space. This awareness is a sign of growth, because the more you clean your environment, the more you clean your inner world. Removing dark artwork is not just an external act, it is an internal declaration that you refuse to let anything shape your energy without your permission. And as your environment becomes clearer, another realization begins to rise. Some objects do not carry darkness in their symbolism, but in their history. Objects touched by trauma, conflict, or spiritual disturbance can carry energy that affects a home even decades later. That awareness leads you to look deeper than appearance, deeper than design, deeper than aesthetics, toward the history behind what you choose to keep. There comes a moment when a person must ask a painful but powerful question: why does my spirit feel so heavy when I am doing everything right? It is in this moment of honest self-reflection that real inner transformation begins. Because sometimes the weight on a person's heart does not come from their actions, but from the invisible agreements they have allowed into their lives. And nothing represents those silent agreements more than objects that carry a history, a purpose, or an energy that pushes the soul away from its path. Not because the object is stronger than the human spirit, but because the human spirit forgets how much authority it truly holds. There is a certain type of item that does this in a subtle way. Items that carry symbols of fear, darkness, or spiritual rebellion. They don't attack loudly, they don't roar, they whisper. And whispers are often more dangerous than shouts, because whispers slip beneath awareness. They settle into the mind. They influence your sense of peace. They feed the part of you that is already exhausted or wounded. And when a person is tired, the smallest whisper can become a heavy chain, This is why people notice that when they remove certain symbols from their home, the atmosphere feels different. Not because the object had magical power, but because the object represented an open door. A door that allowed stress to rise, emotions to intensify, conflicts to deepen, and distractions to multiply. A door that drained strength, little by little, like a slow leak in the spirit. Closing that door is often the first step to reclaiming mental clarity and emotional stability. It is not superstition, it is psychological reality. Symbols influence the subconscious, and the subconscious influences everything else. Among these symbols, one of the most common is the object that was never made to guide the spirit, but to replace spiritual truth with fear. Imagine something in your home that constantly reminds your unconscious mind of darkness, danger, or hidden forces. Even if you tell yourself it's just decoration, your deeper mind does not operate with excuses. It responds to shape, meaning, and memory. If an object holds a symbol that has been used across time to represent distortion, chaos, or the rejection of higher principles, then that symbol speaks directly to the emotional brain, and the emotional brain does not argue. It absorbs. This is why so many people report feeling calmer, safer, and more aligned once they remove such items, because removing them creates a clean inner space. This act sends a message to the mind: I choose peace. I choose clarity. I choose my own spiritual authority. And that message rewires something inside you. It strengthens discipline. It rebuilds confidence. It awakens your sense of power. Small actions like this may seem simple, but they create momentum. Momentum that pushes you toward a stronger, more awakened version of yourself. Think about how the environment affects behavior. A messy room leads to a messy mind. A broken object reminds you of brokenness. A symbol of fear strengthens fear, but a symbol of faith strengthens courage. A symbol of hope reminds you to rise. A symbol of purpose inspires you to keep moving forward. Humans are deeply visual creatures. What we look at every day shapes the path we walk. This is not philosophy, this is psychology. And knowing this gives you the ability to choose, intentionally, what stays in your life. So when a person removes an object with dark or destructive symbolism, they are doing more than clearing space. They are breaking an invisible agreement with negativity. They are taking ownership of their environment. They are reclaiming their emotional and spiritual boundaries. They are saying with action instead of words, nothing enters my home unless it strengthens me. This is a powerful mindset. It creates a shift the moment you embrace it. You start noticing things you never noticed before. You become more protective of your peace. You think twice before accepting gifts that don't feel right. You become more aware of how objects hold meaning and how meaning shapes energy. And with this awareness comes strength. The kind of strength that transforms not only the home, but the person living in it. Because the truth is simple, your environment is part of your spiritual armor. What you allow into your space becomes part of your inner world. And a person who guards their inner world becomes unstoppable. They walk with clarity. They face challenges with confidence. They refuse to settle for anything that steals their peace. This is not fear-based thinking. This is self-leadership. This is self-respect. This is the discipline of someone who refuses to give darkness even 1 inch of their life. And when you operate from this mindset, you begin to feel lighter. You begin to think differently. You begin to attract better things because your spirit is no longer burdened by silent weights. When you remove what does not belong, you make room for what your life truly needs: strength, faith, focus, and a deep grounded peace that cannot be shaken. As the mind becomes more aware of what surrounds it, something powerful starts to happen. The heart begins to recognize the difference between objects that carry peace and objects that carry conflict. This awareness is not sudden. It grows slowly, like light rising in a dark room. At first you notice only a feeling, a restlessness, a heaviness, a sense that something is off. You might not know why. You might not have words for it, but your spirit feels it long before your conscious mind understands it. And this quiet inner tension often points to something in your environment that does not belong. Among the most misleading items people keep without thinking are objects tied to false spiritual practices. Items that promise wisdom, power, or guidance, but lead the mind into confusion instead. These objects may appear harmless,